This content creator, Southpaw Politics on TikTok, has coined a term for it. A lot of people talk about the HasanAbi bump, but what about the HasanAbi hex? Let's take a look.
Hasan has talked up the Hasan bump, where candidates get a boost in the polls after they appear with him. But has anyone talked about the Hasan hex? Did Hasan Piker put a hex on Mallory McMorrow's campaign? Polls indicate she has collapsed into a distant third place ever since she fell victim to Hasan derangement syndrome. McMorrow piled onto a coordinated centrist purity test concocted by an organization who self-claims to hate purity tests, condemning Abdul El Sayed's participation in a rally with Hasan. She compared him to Nick Fuentes and relayed anti-Semitism concerns. Later on, when she was asked if she thinks Hasan is an anti-Semite, she said no. Okay, so then what the hell was that? At best, it was a puzzling miscalculation. At worst, it was a signal to donors and power brokers telling them what side she's going to be on if it comes down to left versus center. Wink, wink, I'll be on your side. McMorrow doubled down on this tomfoolery and questioned if Abdul was really a doctor. What? I don't think this is really the reason her campaign has flatlined. Two things can be true. Most voters in Michigan don't really know much about Hasan, but it also polarized young voters against her, and the 2018 HR politics didn't help with anyone else. More so, I think it's another failure of the triangulation project. McMorrow is running an in-between lanes strategy that has great appeal to the pundit class that has an over-obsession with the left-right spectrum. The strategists think it's a Goldilocks zone to bring the wings of the parties together, but really it turns into a no man's land, squeezed from both sides. We need to rein in data centers, but here I am giving one a tax break. Corporate money poisons our politics, but here I am taking all of their money. ICE is lawless and out of control. Here's why we should fund it. Healthcare is a human right, but not really. Israel's committing a genocide. Here's why we should keep giving them military aid. The left has had electoral problems because who they are appealing to, that coalition of people, has been too white and too educated to build a wide enough coalition. This progressive, pragmatic, technocratic project is even whiter and even more educated, thus smaller and not viable outside of the most...
Yeah, the Goldilocks zone comes across as insincere. It shows that you lack moral conviction to the average person. And it's a super simple issue to identify with, because the overwhelming majority of the American population, whether they're in the primaries or whether they're in the general, see exactly what's going on in Gaza. They see it as a genocide. They see it as horrifying. They see it as something that should be put an end to. And beyond that, they also see what Israel has done in domestic politics, right? The point I'm trying to make is the average person, simply put, doesn't like Israel. They don't like what Israel is doing in Gaza. They don't like what Israel is doing in Lebanon. They don't like what Israel has done to goad America into going and waging war with Iran. They don't like that translates to higher gas prices for themselves. It's understandable that the average person doesn't like this. And then on top of that, they see people who defend Israel constantly chirp on their timelines, constantly demand cancellations, deplatforming. They see massive donors to the Trump campaign, massive billionaire mega donors go and purchase places like TikTok, CNN, CBS, all at the behest of both the MAGA movement and also this foreign country and its interests. They don't like that. They don't like that at all. So when someone is afraid to call that out, if someone is afraid to say the truth about what's going on, they see that as being insincere. And they're not wrong. Okay? This is a simple narrative. It's a simple to understand narrative, but it's also correct. It's a perfect situation. It's a simple narrative, and it's one that the average person can understand, right? It's a simple narrative that the average person can understand, and it's fantastic for us because it's also true. Oftentimes, simple to understand narratives actually are not correct or aren't like good litmus tests, right? In this circumstance, it is a good litmus test. It happens to be a good litmus test because if you are afraid to say the truth about what Israel is doing, both as it pertains to American foreign policy, but also what Israel is doing in shaping American domestic policy, and you're frustrated with that, and then you see the overwhelming majority of American politicians refuse to call it out, you find that to be insincere. And that insincerity is precisely what people despise about modern politics. It's funny that the modern Democratic Party was built around the idea we're not going to get caught cheerleading again for the next Vietnam. And then they went 0 for 2 in getting caught cheerleading again for the next Vietnams. This is a simple to understand narrative, but it also translates to being honest and being a real fighter on issues that people care about beyond Israel as well. Although it is one of the greatest moral crises of our generation, genocide is the crime of all crimes, it also extends to where certain politicians will be on other issues. Will they care more about corporate interests and corporate donations, or will they care about the needs of their constituents? That's it. That's it. If you can't say Israel committed a genocide, that Israel's an apartheid state and therefore deserves accountability, then you're not going to side with your constituents when it comes to healthcare. You're going to side with big corporations. You're going to side with big pharma. You're going to side with private healthcare providers. And people can understand that. That's why it's not only a simple to understand, easy to define message, but it's also one that translates to being earnest, being an earnest fighter for all of these other issues that people care about, not just Israel.
Favorable districts towards it. But I really hope McMorrow supporters can get behind Abdul El-Sayed, because Haley Stevens is everything wrong with the Democratic Party.
Yeah, that's where the HasanAbi bump comes from, or the HasanAbi hex, as he's coining.